Queer Games, heck yeah for today. I'm Luke, I'm a game dev. I'm thrilled to be here to have a look at another queer game, a little indie game, a little gem. If you don't like surprise content, look away, because I don't know much about these games going in. Although I say that every game, but surely that's wearing thin by now. You'd think I would have a pretty good idea about what I'm actually looking at, but I'm going to pretend that I don't. Oh well. Where to begin with Drag Her? Okay, so this is a game that was on Kickstarter. It was kickstarted about 2 years ago, I think 2022, maybe, plus or minus a year. I backed it, little humble brag. I try to back all the queer games that I find on Kickstarter, which isn't as many as you think. It's more than you think, but not as many as you would think. Now, the story of this game is really quite interesting, and maybe it's more interesting than the game itself. Who knows? We'll find out. But basically, this is a very high-profile gay game, or queer game, or indie game, however you want to categorize it. And it's fallen over, unfortunately. They announced during the week that they wouldn't be able to do the full release, but they have put up, the devs, they have put up what they've done for free on Steam, so people can look at it and play with it and see what could have been, or might have been. Which I give them real credit for doing that, because it's like, think of how heartbreaking everything is for them at the moment. The temptation to just, when it falls down in a heap, the temptation to just walk away, or crawl away, or just go into hiding, it must be phenomenal. But they've dusted themselves off, they've polished it up, and they've pushed it out and said, they've taken the hits, as it were. They've taken their lumps, and I think it hurts extra for Drag Her because it was a very high-profile game, because it did a Kickstarter, which is always really tough to do Kickstarter. I did a Kickstarter, and they're hard. Like, you think, oh, I'll just put up a page and some art, and if people like it, they'll throw me some money. But it's way beyond that. It's almost as hard as making a game itself, in my opinion. And then, of course, you're always like just making the threshold, which is almost as bad as not making it, because if you ask for X amount of money and you make X amount of money plus $1, then that's kind of like your bare minimum in a way, whereas obviously you want to make triple or 10 times the amount. But yeah, if you just make it, then you've committed to it, but with like the barest of resources. In this game, they did ask for a decent chunk, I think about 75 grand. I don't know if that's Australian or US, but whatever. And they made it. I think they got about 77. I'm just trying to vaguely remember those numbers. I could be wrong. So they just made it over the limit to have to commit to it, which is always kind of a cruel thing to do to a game dev. But they got what they asked for in more ways than one. So it was quite high profile for Kickstarter, but then it was also very high profile because it had a bit of a celebrity cachet, because this game is one of the very few branded queer games. So we get a lot of devs making their passion projects, but very few, I guess, commercially oriented projects. But even like the most commercially oriented gay project is still just a bunch of indies behind the scene. You know what I mean? What do they call it when the horse bursts out of the box? Came out of the starting gate at a gallop. Very, regular updates, very colourful, very bright, and also it's a fighting game, whereas a lot of queer games are visual novels. So it was a genre, sort of very ambitious project. A little unusual to be using the WASD keys to move out the menus, but that's alright. Fight locally with up to 4 frenemies. I don't have any friends. I've got plenty of frenemies. Online, drag is a worldwide phenomenon, and it's time for you to bring your battles to all corners of the world. Ooh, I don't know if we want to play online. We might have to, because once again, this isn't a complete game. Okay, so who have we got? Alaska, Kingchi, Laganja. They might be the only 3 in the game. Alright, we'll go Kimchi. How do I... Nope. Drag her. Okay, player 1. Alright, let's go. Player 1. I don't know if the controller's gonna work. Get ready to gag. Oh wow, it looks great. Oh, I can't fold these graphics. Alright, I'm gonna have to use keyboard. Oh, I see. Uh-oh. Command list. No. Oh, duck. Jump. Oh, wow. How cool are these graphics? I like the spotlight. Okay. I said I don't know my fighting game key bindings. Okay, so J did something, and K did something. Alright, okay, right. I think this is one of those things where if you're a fighting gamer, you know what you're doing, whereas I have to figure out a little bit. Basically, the keyboard reminds me, the way the keyboard's set up reminds me of going to an arcade and having to bump the buttons, and like using all of your fingers. Alright, first impressions. I mean, the graphics are great. Also, it feels very fightery. Like, this is not someone who's just tried to make a drag game and thought, you know, let's make a fighting game. I actually get the vibe that this is a fighting game first. Okay. Donut. Oh, so that's block. That's one of our fights. Ooh. See, look how rapid fire that is. Oh, and there's like a combo. I see. Okay, now I'm beginning to understand why this game took so long to make and why they never quite finished it, because there is a fabulous amount of... Okay, that's cool. Oh, I don't know if we can we actually kill this person in training? Alright, try this. That's cool. Oh, and see when you... Oh, okay. Gee, it's been a while since I played it, because I've not really played a fighter game. I mean, this is all very interesting to me already. It's an unfortunate reality of gay games that they almost completely overlap with visual novels, and maybe sometimes with RPG elements. Like, I would say 99% of the LGBT specific games are visual novels, and the rest are maybe Bitsy or RPG Maker. So it's really hard to, if you make a gay game in a different game genre, will the audience come with you? Like, will the visual novelers play a fighting game? That's really tough. And then, but then the flip side is also really tough. Like, will fighting game fans come to you for a gay game? I mean, probably not. And that's not to say that the mainstream audience is homophobic or anything. It's more just that if you make something for a group of people, that other group of people, like the vast bulk of everyone else, will probably just go, oh, it's not for me, and just move on. And there's nothing malignant about that or anything. That's just the way it is. Dare we try online? Okay, we'll give online a little brief look. Change character, quit match 2 player. Searching for a room. I don't know if there is an online component. Also, because I'm in Australia, pretty much Europe and America are always asleep. Hopefully there's someone in Japan, or Vladivostok, that wants to play some Drag Her. Alright, well, I don't think that's going to happen today. Interesting. That was a brief look at Drag Her. My absolute sympathy goes out to the developers. It is so hard to make a video game. It's so hard to make a polished video game or commercial quality video game. It's so hard to make a gay game. I don't think people realize just, you know, the extra responsibility you take on when you decide to make a gay game, a queer game. It's so hard to make a branded game. You know, I worked on a game about 6 years ago, Miss Fisher Murder Mysteries, and just as soon as you bring in other people's intellectual property, just the complexity skyrockets. You've got to get approval for likenesses. You know, you've got to be careful about which things you use and can't use, which story elements you can use and can't use. Like, I can only imagine what it took to get the 3 drag queens that we saw in this game, to get that over the, you know, permission to use that in the game. And it can be very expensive too. But yeah, so just my absolute sympathy to developers. What we see is really quite amazing, and I mean, they could open source it, I think. Like, already I could just tell if there was a proper AI mode, that would be a lot of fun, you know, even if it's just the 3 drag queens. So maybe open source it, let other developers, other creative people upload their own art. That would be pretty interesting. So close. I mean, that's the thing I think that's really crushing about this game not quite making it over the line, is that clearly once you've got 2 characters on the screen fighting with that complexity of combinations that we saw, like, the game, the framework is 90% done. Like, really, it's just a content issue. I guess the multiplayer stuff and the AI stuff are, like, not to undersell that, that's all really hard too. But this game, it's like not vaporware. It is like a functioning game. Like, the scaffolding is there, and they just couldn't build the rest of the building. But yeah, I backed this on Kickstarter. I think I got my money's worth. Over the 2 years of following development and just poking around in it today, I don't feel ripped off. You know, with Kickstarter, I do consider it like the money's gone the second I spend it. So to actually see anything is really quite cool, and I hope the devs have learnt a lot and can come back in the future with a game or with some other creative passion when they refined their creative passion. And, you know, I think it's really important, whether you're making games or any other thing, is do not set yourself on fire to keep other people warm. Like, I've run myself into the ground to get a game over the line when I should have just cut my losses. Yes, it hurts and it stings, but, you know, don't wreck yourself. They're just games, you know, they're just little fun art objects. But when you're in it, it's so serious, you know, and it's your whole world. And I think that looks like that's what's happened here. But what I see is there's nothing to be ashamed of here. Oh well, thank you all for joining me on this briefish episode. You know, it was this little special game today on Queer Games Heck Yeah, just to see something a little bit different, not just in the genre and not just in the visuals, but also just in how the game came to be. Alright, I'll see you next time. Bye.